they put $50 million into the company before they started making any money. Like they're down $50 million, which doesn't sound like a lot now. But when you're building a sport that doesn't exist, like that's $50 million that came out of the Fertitta's bank account. Like that's their own money that they put into the company.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to a very special episode of the I Didn't Read Your Book podcast. You may notice this looks a little bit different. Don't worry, the interview will be exactly as you expected. But we are doing something special today. We are speaking with another YouTube content creator. So his channel is Jesse on Fire. Definitely go subscribe. He also has Jesse on Everything.
Like I was an entrepreneur way before I was a YouTuber. And so I think like an entrepreneur. I don't think like a YouTuber, like if my, and it's possible that YouTube itself may end up being the kind of end game entrepreneurial endeavor of this entire experience. But, the best advice I could ever give anybody as an entrepreneur is like relationships create everything. Like and that can be in both directions also. Like you can make your life on a single relationship that's valuable. And you can also have your life fucking ripped out from under you because of a single enemy that you have. And the people, if you're playing the game to win for real, like if you're really looking at the top and you're like, how do I position myself there? First of all, you have to have a long view, like you have to have a long view. You can't, if you're thinking like, and that's with YouTube too. Like if your goal is to have, I want to get to 100,000 subscribers, and you're like, and man, I'll be so pissed if that doesn't happen in the first 6 months. You're like, hey, good luck with that, bud. It's like,
it could happen.
You need to have,
but that's not a good plan.
It could not doing what I do. Like just because YouTube doesn't, YouTube won't prioritize. Like, I know this now. Like if it's someone just talking into a camera, YouTube does not promote that at all. Like they don't like having people like that.
What link's in the description?
It's true though, because like they don't want to platform that many people who just talk into a camera. They would prefer there to be like highly produced stuff. So like, to any, young creators out there, I would suggest.
So sorry to interrupt your podcast experience. I just want to remind you, if you're enjoying what you're watching, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content. And if you really love it, there's some support links in the description. I would love if you can help out the channel. And back to the show.
Taking that into account, that like YouTube's algorithm is not just tracking who comments, view time. It's also tracking what kind of content you put out there, and it will 100% prioritize a highly produced, multi-cuts, high definition thing over other stuff. I'm moving off track though. But anyway, but when it comes to like talking about fighter pay, it's very difficult to frame the conversation around fighter pay without putting yourself in a position where if the UFC brass sees it, they're going to look at you in a negative light. You're not, like, and there's a reason. Like, do you really think that Chael doesn't think that there's a way that fighters could get a larger piece of the overall revenue pie? Of course he does. He would never say it because he works for Dana. Like, he understands the business like I do. So it's like, much better than I do probably, but like, you don't want Dana to look at you as an enemy, which is one of the reasons why it made me very nervous that like I was on the map talking about the Francis Ngannou deal, and all that stuff before I really understood the landscape, where it was like, oh, okay, they're in like a contractual thing. And I'm, I've made pretty clear that, I'm talking to these guys, whatever. And then now in hindsight, it's like, oh shit, those guys are fucking enemies of the state for real. So if we're talking to like a non-UFC audience, then I can just probably be a little bit more specific about this stuff. So basically, the UFC has the industry completely by the balls, which is why they're able to control fighter pay the way that they are. So basically, what they've done is they have a vice grip on both the infrastructure that you need to be effective as a fight promoter in mixed martial arts, and on the contracts which would subsequently make a competing organization a potential threat. So think about it like this. if you are a brand new organization, or not even brand new, let's say you're a competing smaller organization, how are you going to compete with the UFC? Okay. Ultimately, you need star fighters to compete with the UFC. Okay. Which means that you somehow need to gain the contractual relationship with an already established superstar fighter, which the UFC has exclusive rights to all of them, right? Or you need to build them yourself. Okay. How the hell are you going to build them yourself when everyone knows they're fighting inferior opponents? Like, you need someone who has tremendous charisma, exciting fighting style, etc. Someone like Michael Venom Page in Bellator. That guy is a superstar, right? And even still, in Bellator, it's like, he still has a low ceiling because he's in Bellator.
Like, I know who he is, but
he is, right. But it's considered an inferior organization, and thus, no matter, he could knock out 1,000 people, and he still, it would be like, well, how do you think he'd do in the UFC? It's like, you can't get the respect that a superstar needs for full validation as a superstar combat athlete without being in the UFC. And thus,
that was not a mistake.
What's that?
That was not a mistake, that the UFC has that gravitas in the industry.
Well, the UFC built the entire sport.
Right.
That's the thing, is like, there's a lot of complexity to the conversation, because what the UFC is doing now, in many ways, could be considered extraordinarily unethical as it relates to like how they deal with fighter pay. Because they are paying significantly less than they could. I mean, like obscenely less than they could, but not obscenely less than the fighters could get somewhere else. But the reason for that is because they've locked everyone else out of the business. So it's not that they have a monopoly, but they have a monopoly, right? Like, it's like they don't actually have but there's not enough room in these other organizations. Okay, so they make their contracts nearly impossible to get out of while you still have value. That's what they do, is they structure the contracts where they have you locked in for a certain amount of time. And in order for you to get out of that contract, like, they've seen this movie before. They know how long the half-life of a fighter is. And so if they've signed a guy to a 5-year, 6-fight or 8-fight contract when they're 32, they know the likelihood of that guy getting, being 37, having fought 6 or 7 more times, and still being a big draw that they would be concerned about losing is next to nothing. Like, it's very unlikely that it'll happen. And this is actually coming off of how they used to do their contracts, which were basically deemed illegal, where they had no time limit, and they had, I've become privy to a lot of this stuff. They have all these things in there where if a fighter does this, it extends them by 6 months. Like, they have, so it's like, it's an 8-fight deal, right? But if they do this, it adds a fight and 6 months. If they do this, it adds a fight and 6 months. If they do that, and you're talking stuff that, like, they're all going to do, man. Like, it becomes this perpetual contract that they can't get out of. Now, when you're starting out as the UFC, you have to structure your deals like that, because you can't be, they put $50 million into the company before they started making any money. Like, they're down $50 million, which doesn't sound like a lot now, but when you're building a sport that doesn't exist, like, that's $50 million that came out of the Fertitta's bank account. Like, that's their own money that they put into the company. And they really couldn't make it profitable if they were signing guys and then they would, put all this marketing dollars into these guys. They would get up and become, valuable, and then they could just go shoot out and go somewhere else. So they had to have the guys locked in. It's just that now they're a global established brand. They have everyone locked in. They're bringing in tremendously more money. I mean, like, astronomically more money. And fighter pay, they say fighter pay's gone up. It hasn't, actually. They spend more money on fighter pay. It is capitalism by design. Like, if I'm the CEO of that company, because here's the thing, Dana is very generous with specific guys. Like, if Bryce Mitchell says, I'm going to donate $40,000 to this charity, Dana goes, don't do that. I got you. If someone says they need something, Dana pays for it. I guarantee you Dana is paying for Cain Velasquez's defense fund. I would bet my life on that the UFC is helping pay for that, or Dana. But
I would think just for no other reason, just because he's so closely tied to them, but definitely.
And because Dana's a good dude.
Yeah.
Like, but he owes his business efforts to the shareholders. That's the way it works. He's the CEO of the company. And the number one cost that's going to contribute to success, or to their margin has to do with how much they pay fighters. Like every single show that the UFC puts on is a dance of what's the expense and what's the revenue. Like it's that simple. And so the fighters are like, well, I want this much. And that money is coming directly out of the profit, which, what's a fair amount that should go to the fighters? Right now, it's like less than 20% or something like that. And the UFC's profiting like some outlandish amount of money. Doesn't seem fair, but at the same time, fair has nothing to do with it. What the fuck does fair have?
Exactly.